Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the Prime Minister of the Zulu Nation, has dismissed reports on social media that he has resigned as the Prime Minister to the AmaZulu Monarch. He said he continues to serve at the behest of His Majesty King MisuZulu kaZwelithini for as long as he requires his services, support and guidance. Cultural experts and Indonsa Yesizwe think tank founder Professor Musa Xulu joins us now for more on that conversation. Papasha, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. The last time we spoke, you said the royal Zulu family needs to call a meeting between His Majesty the King and the Prime Minister and have a good talk around this particular issue and clear the air. Well, the Prince Mtwana saying that, well, the reports of a fallout between him and His Majesty are actually a fallacy. It's not true. Does that mean this matter has now been squashed and sorted out? Have they sat around the table?
Well, thanks, Thabo. Thanks, fellow South Africans. That was 4 weeks ago. We pointed out that there was a rift. As you rightly say, then the Prince of Kwapindangene said, no, that was a figment of wishful thinking from Professor Musa Xulu of Indonsa Yesizwe. But we knew that with all these things that are coming out in the media, His Majesty releasing press statements through his own people, and those being contradicted by press statements from the Prince of Kwapindangene, we knew that there was a problem. So everybody knows now, and it's been confirmed everywhere, as you saw even in today's newspapers, there's a big problem. And the big problem, the fallout has been around the Ingonyama Trust, who became the chairperson. We pointed out 4 weeks ago that the King, His Majesty, should take over the position of being the chairperson of the Ingonyama Trust as per the Act. The King chose that he's going to choose a proxy in the form of Chief Mzimela, Inkosi Mzimela Thanduyise, to replace a long-standing chairperson of Ingonyama Trust, who is a former judge, Jerome Ngwenya. Now, to tell the truth, fellow South Africans, this thing must not continue anymore. It's not possible to replace a former judge with, say, a school teacher. For example, I'm not looking down upon school teachers. I'm a former school teacher myself. I'm just saying, in terms of the job description of what needs to happen at chairperson level there, it would have been a good thing if Judge Jerome Ngwenya was retained for some time. And then, of course, whoever would come after him would then be groomed. You know, it's called transition. And all transitions must be just. When you talk about just transition, is to make sure that it becomes smooth. So that there's not a situation where certain parties become aggrieved because you have rushed transition. So
Umtwana says his advice to the King was that the chairperson elected, and to your point, should have legal expertise, saying I didn't really make the decision for him. The King is the sole custodian, of course. Beyond that, the chairperson should be somebody with legal expertise. That one would say, well, there are a number of people with legal expertise in the country who would be judges, retired judges, current judges, that could certainly take that position and have that kind of experience. Why would we be tied to this one particular judge?
No, not necessarily tied to this one. This is how it happened. When the Act was implemented after 1994 elections, some white legal person, I forgot his name, took over as an advisor because at that time the King was chairperson and trustee. But when things changed after 1998-97, His Majesty the late King decided that he is nominating former Judge Jerome Ngwenya to take over this, and it was from scratch. So Judge Jerome Ngwenya was building this institution from scratch. So I was only referring to legal expertise plus experience. But you're right when you say Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi says, no, it should have been anybody with legal experience, and I concur with that. It's a correct assertion. it should be somebody with legal experience, because there's just a lot of issues around the issues of land in South Africa at the moment. And most of them end up in courts. Tomorrow we'll be dealing with the issues in Limpopo, where there has been lots of complaints about how the traditional leaders are, conducting the issues of land. So I'm saying maybe we need more of those people with legal expertise to take over these kind of portfolios.
Now, the other question, of course, is the question around the role of being the Prime Minister. I mean, is that also, once again, a position that you serve at the behest of the King? Does the King appoint who will be the Prime Minister of the Zulu nation, who advises the monarch?
Yeah, no, the position of the Prime Minister is not legislated in terms of the post-1994 setup in South Africa, but it's a customary position. Now, this is how it happens. Every time a king takes over from the times of King Shaka, he will take over and then he will appoint a Prime Minister. King Shaka himself did not appoint his own Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, Ngomane Kamtombole of the Mdleje, was imposed on him by King Dingiswayo of the Mtetwa. Usually, the Prime Minister is either a warrior or a well-known legal person or some kind of achiever of sorts who has to know the culture and the customs of the Zulu nation. So Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi fits in very well there, and he has been doing that for the past 70 years. Now, when he says that he has not resigned, it was caused by some media reports, social media reports, that he has resigned. I can't see him resigning, because if he does so, he will leave a vacuum that could be problematic for the future of the kingdom.
Is it something that His Majesty can request to release him from his position if the King so desires?
Well, the King can so desire and say so, but let me tell you, you must remember when we spoke maybe before October last year, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi was already saying, can I be released from this position? And His Majesty was saying it's impossible. It's impossible because when you become a king, you can look at King Charles as well in terms of England. These institutions are by nature very conservative institutions. They are there for tradition, continuity, and very selective change. So His Majesty, our King, okay, you can say has been in charge since 2021, but maybe we can say now he's been in charge since the 29th of October 2022. It's a short period of time for him to make drastic changes to the structures of the Zulu kingdom. You also remember that the Zulu kingdom is a federal kingdom. Yeah. All these 300 Amakosi are in their own right independent of the Zulu royal household. So they can decide any day to move away and nothing will happen. Yeah. And you'll see a lot of that if they become dissatisfied with the goings on, is because changes in their own nature tend to be very unwelcome, and people will react to them in a manner that sometimes says that maybe His Majesty, our King, should slow down, maybe we can say so, on making drastic changes overnight. Yeah.
Now, you've mentioned also the delicate process of transition and how meticulous one needs to be in the handling of the transition when you were referring to the Ingonyama Trust chairperson. But would there be a process similar to that when it comes to, for example, the position of Prime Minister of the Zulu nation? Umntwana has been holding that position for 70 years, he says himself, and has done a stellar job there. Is there a process of succession where there is a Prime Minister who's been groomed?
Well, in the best of times, a new Prime Minister will have to be groomed. Because you must understand also that the Zulu kingdom is a sub-national kingdom, which means that it's not like Lesotho or Eswatini or Morocco, where, His Majesty has got all the powers to can say anything that he wants any day in the morning. A subnational kingdom exists within the laws of the country. So a new prime minister will have to be groomed to understand the nature of the Zulu kingdom and other kingdoms in South Africa in the context of a democratic South Africa. That is very important because sometimes I hear a lot of people now confusing things and thinking that the kings in South Africa are absolute monarchs. They are not absolute monarchs. So all of that needs orientation to understand that, listen, you exist here, we exist here as a kingdom within a constitutional democracy. And therefore, you don't have all this leeway to can say anything that you want to say any day and so on. And so what we say is maybe if the king, His Majesty, our king, and I appeal to him, because sometimes we talk, that if he wants to make changes, it's very important that there's lots of consultations with Amakosi, consultations with the educated elite, consultations with the clergy and all the structures that make up Indlunkulu, consultations with the Zulu royal family, and consultations with all the 4 or 5 structures that make the federal kingdom of the Zulus.
Yeah. Now, I see some reports suggesting that Mntwana has called an imbizo of Amakosi for Friday. Again, the media report saying he's intending to resign. Has he called a meeting of Amakosi, and what is likely to be an agenda or conversation that they'll be having?
Well, it's a very interesting meeting because in the beginning it was announced as an imbizo. An imbizo, everybody, even Musa Xulu would walk in there, but then it was restricted to Amakosi and mayors, so it becomes more or less a government structure. But the likely issues to be discussed there are not difficult to comprehend. One will be the oncoming cases against His Majesty our King. 2 would be Ingonyama Trust and how to manage it. There's a problem with Ingonyama Trust as it stands now, the land, because actually, quite interestingly so, the Act gives powers to Amakosi to administer the land, to be the ones that are the custodians of the land. And His Majesty is a trustee. That needs a lot of legal unpacking in terms of meaning. The meaning may be that because the Act says, for example, His Majesty cannot decide on land use issues without the written permission from Amakosi. So those are the issues that will be discussed. Also, you must remember, Thabo, this whole thing of Ingonyama Trust came about in around 1993, early 1994, as we were working towards the elections, the first democratic elections.
Yes.
When Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi decided with the KwaZulu government and maybe the IFP also that they would not be able to go to participate in the 1994 elections unless the issue around Ingonyama and the land of the Zulu was deliberated upon.
Right.
So it's not an issue that you can take lightly. It's got lots of political connotations. I remember there were lots of marches around January, February, March 1993 in a situation which was called Izimfuno Zesilo, Izimfuno Zengonyama, where everyone, in almost every corner of KwaZulu-Natal, even in Gauteng, people were marching to say, if His Majesty, our King, and our land is not recognized, we are not participating in the elections.
Right.
So it's a very complicated matter. Of course, you'll find that today, Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi complains that there's people like, he said yesterday, Nesi, I've never met him, that have come now from nowhere. You'll always find those people that don't know the history and they come and then of course they position themselves. But it's a very complicated matter. I think on Friday those issues will be discussed by Amakosi and the mayors, and what you do with land use issues in traditional land and so on.
Yeah. You've also mentioned that the court challenges of His Majesty could certainly make it on the list of things that could be discussed. Is there a certain unease around the support of the Prime Minister when it comes to those court cases?
Yeah, well, yesterday the Prime Minister said the matter is sub judice. He didn't want to discuss. But today things started circulating. I think the court cases are going to have a very big impact on the future of the Zulu nation. I'm not a lawyer. I've seen a lot of things and I've read a lot of things circulating, some of them sent to my office for my perusal in my capacity as an analyst and a researcher in terms of the Zulu nation, the Zulu kingdom issues. I'm not very comfortable with the oncoming court cases, and I think Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi is also not comfortable. No one is comfortable. Amakosi are not comfortable. I don't think His Majesty is comfortable. I don't think Prince Magade is comfortable. It's those things that you look at them and you say, maybe there should have been another way of settling these disputes.
And do you think that there could be a way of settling these disputes without going to the Western courts? Prof, are you still there?
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm saying, do you think there is a way of settling these disputes without going to the courts?
There is a way. Our call as Indonsa, Yesizwe, and all others that are concerned, I know there's a few groups, we're trying to get His Majesty and Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi to meet any day before Friday. If it happens, well, we analysts, of course, I don't want to be too much of activists, but there's a lot of activity that is currently going on. Some professors and some Amakosi, some bishops also called me to say they're trying to trace His Majesty the King, because everybody's saying, and we in Indonsa are saying the same thing, if Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi and His Majesty the King don't meet and iron out their differences, we're heading for a big disaster.
Prof, appreciate your time. Thank you very much, as always, for coming on and helping us understand these things. Cultural experts and analysts, Indonsa Yesizwe think tank founder, Professor Musa Xulu.